Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a prophetic mystery that has fascinated people for literally centuries. So who is this King of the North? It's a huge question from a prophecy that's 2,500 years old. To figure it out, we're actually going to travel back in time to the 19th century, where a group of very devout believers were absolutely convinced they had solved it. And their method? Well, it reveals a completely fascinating way of looking at history itself. So, history's unbreakable code. See, before we can even get to who this king is, you've got to understand the single most important tool they used to figure it all out. It was kind of like their secret decoder ring for all of prophecy. And here it is, the doctrine of providence. So what does that mean? For them, it was simple. Prophecy isn't just a few lucky guesses about the future. No, they believed it was history, literally written down before it ever happened. Like God had already laid out the entire script, and the rise and fall of empires was just the play being acted out, scene by scene. This quote really gets to the heart of it. What they're saying is, in God's plan, there are no do-overs. An event is predicted, it happens once, exactly as foretold, and that's it. It gets locked into history, forever. So think about it. If every fulfilled prophecy is like a permanent landmark on a map, it gives you a way to navigate. This gave these believers an incredible sense of certainty. They felt they could literally look back, see the landmarks of past prophecies, and say, okay, we are right here on God's timeline. Okay, let's follow that trail. With this special map in hand, they went straight to the book of Daniel. And for them, chapter 11 wasn't just any chapter. It was the most detailed, turn-by-turn section of the entire map. And as they read, it was like this perfect, unbroken chain of history just unfolded. It starts with Media and Persia. Then, boom, Greece rises and gets divided just like the prophecy said. After that, the big one, pagan Rome. It's all there. The prophecy even marks the crucifixion, the death of the Prince of the Covenant. Then, after pagan Rome fades, a new kind of religious power rises. And it keeps going for centuries, all the way to a revolutionary, atheistic power in France. You see? One event after another, each one unique. Each one happening only once. So, after following this prophetic road for centuries, the timeline in Daniel brings them right up to what it calls the time of the end. And they believed this period started in a very specific year, 1798. Why then? Well, that's when Napoleon's army arrested the Pope, effectively ending the papacy's political power, which they saw as the major event that kicked off this final era. Now, once we're in this time of the end, the prophecy zooms in on a huge final conflict. It's between two key players, the King of the North and the King of the South. But their identities aren't based on who they are or what they believe. It's just geography, pure and simple. Are you the main power north of Israel? Then you're the King of the North. Are you the main power to the south? You're the King of the South. And these titles just get passed along as empires rise and fall. All right, identifying the final king. So they followed this map right up to their own doorstep, and they were totally convinced that the very last verses of Daniel 11 held the final clues to unmasking this guy. And the prophecy basically gives them a checklist. So this final king of the north, he has to push back against the king of the south right at the time of the end. He's got to enter the glorious land, that's Israel. He overthrows a bunch of countries, but then he runs into trouble from the east and the north. And finally, the prophecy says he comes to his end with nobody there to help him. So they took that checklist and they looked at the world around them in the 1800s. And for them, one power fit every single clue: the Ottoman Empire. I mean, think about it. Was it geographically north of Israel? Yes. Did it control the glorious land? Absolutely. Was it constantly in conflict with a southern power like Egypt? Yup. Was it getting pressure from Russia to its north and other powers in the east? You bet. For them, it was like watching the last piece of the puzzle just slide perfectly into place. But here's the thing. Identifying the Ottoman Empire, so what? Why did solving this ancient puzzle matter so much to them? This wasn't just some historical trivia game. Because for these believers, this was everything. In a world that probably felt just as chaotic as ours does sometimes, seeing ancient prophecy lock into place with the newspaper headlines of their day was powerful proof that history wasn't random at all. It showed them God was still in control. It meant there was one single, continuous story being told, guided by one divine author, from the very beginning right to the very end. And this belief, this idea of a single story written across time, it became the very foundation of how they saw the world. So the bottom line is, this meant they didn't see themselves as helpless victims, just being tossed around by politics and social forces. No way. They believed they were active participants, living in the final chapter of a grand story that God himself had written, and a story where he'd already guaranteed the ending. This view gave them an incredible amount of certainty in an uncertain world. And it leaves us with a pretty big question, doesn't it? How do we find meaning and pattern in the events of our own time? What these 19th century believers did shows us one powerful way a community found its anchor. By seeing history as prophecy being fulfilled, they found an unshakable pattern in the chaos. And it leaves you wondering, where do we look for our map today?